Yeah.
And
That'll change over the weekend.
yeah, sadly, it always does, doesn't it? But we might get up to 30 degrees today, so who knows? I don't feel so bad. When you walk outside and you get stood straight up by a strong north wind. Hey, gang, if you're still looking for that perfect gift to really finish the holidays right, or maybe you're looking to get engaged, whatever it might be, Cutting Edge Gallery of Jewelry is the place for you. Jeff Fry and his team over at Cutting Edge, they specialize in selection. They've got the largest selection of diamonds, loose gemstones, and mountings in the upper Midwest, and their service is phenomenal. They'll give you some ideas, let you decide. You just go in there and say, hey, here's what I'm kind of looking for. Here's my budget, and they'll show you a whole bunch of options. Alex has been over there. I've been over there. It. And that's really the place to go. They're at 4507 33rd Avenue South in Fargo. That's Cutting Edge Gallery of Jewelry.
Yeah, if you're looking for jewelry, that is the only place to go. You don't have to compare anywhere else.
Yeah, and if you're looking for something a little out of the ordinary, they got a lot of sapphires and morganites and rubies, all that kind of stuff.
They'll custom make any piece for you right there in the store.
Yeah, it's good stuff over there. Okay, 807. I'm always happy when I say my friend Scott Beaulier walked through the door, but especially today. Scott, I'm dying to have a conversation with you about some of the economic news going on here, so glad to see you. By the way, how was holidays, the things with Christmas and New Year's good with you and the family?
Absolutely. Fabulous. Great to be on. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Okay, so I'm going to get right to it here. We're seeing the stock market. We know what's happening. The market's just blowing it out right now. Consumer confidence is strong. Business owner confidence is strong. Almost everything that you might point to as one of the elements that you'd put in the recipe to make a strong and confident economy is there. Yet we continue to see the last numbers for GDP growth were in that low twos, and we ripped Obama for 2% growth. Do we really think that we're measuring economic growth the right way in this country right now?
That's a great question. I'm not sure that we are. If you look at just the advances we've enjoyed through technology, it's probably not being captured in full. The price effects from technology also aren't. Computers are ridiculously cheap today compared to where they were 40 years ago. The power that we have in our pockets, we're basically robots when you think about it. You can get any information you want with your thumb. That's amazing. And all of that probably isn't reflected in these official statistics that are focused on heavy production of manufacturing. So the 2% economy may in fact be 4%, and we're just not very good at measuring it. So it's the economy is ridiculously strong when you look at job growth. You look at the unemployment rate down around 4%. The Fargo area is even hotter than that.
Yeah.
Things are fabulous in terms of the overall state of the economy right now, yet you just get these clunky readings of 2%.
Yeah.
And that seems just to be the forever normal.
Yeah. You made a good point there, and I hadn't thought about that before, but your buying power in technology now as a consumer is off the charts ridiculous. This little phone that I paid, $600 for is a supercomputer that used to probably cost $20,000 back in the old days. And so if you value what I can get for what I'm paying for it, my dollar is going a lot further. And that might factor into this whole conversation about how do we really reflect what our buying power is in the economy right now.
So it's true for technology, it's true for food, it's true for energy. We spend less at restaurants than we did 30 years ago. Gas prices in real terms are very cheap.
Yeah.
You can go on and on in terms of clothing, much more inexpensive, and that's all thanks to just technological drive, keeping inflation down, but also just something being missed in terms of official productivity.
By the way, I should give you the title. Scott is the dean of the business school at North Dakota State University and does a number of things. He runs the Challey Institute up there that got put together last year. So he's kind of my go-to guy when I'm like, Scott, I need a readout because something doesn't make sense here. So topic number 2, the United States has struggled to find markets for soybeans now for quite some time because the president, along with China, they're in a battle with the tariffs and so on and so forth. But it looks like this new phase 1 trade agreement between the two is going to provide for more exports. There were more soybeans exported to China in November than there have been for the last 20 months. So good news there. It looks like we're starting to see an increased trend there. Might some of that, now soybeans here is huge because the Red River Valley is what we do here. Maybe across the country it's not such a big deal, but does any of this trade stuff with the tariffs, does that you think maybe get involved in some of this GDP number and kind of keep it suppressed a little bit?
A little bit. I think it's actually pretty small and quite noisy. One thing that's happened during the Trump presidency in the first term is there was a lot of volatility in terms of what's the latest on trade news early in his presidency.
Right.
Now it's essentially discounted, where you hear a new headline, it's maybe delayed, it's coming sooner, and there's just less market movement up or down. So we've basically baked in that trade negotiations are going to be slow, dysfunctional, and markets can live with that. This is an interesting month in that around the 15th, they may get close to a deal, and there's incentives for that because later in the month, both leaders are going to be in Davos, I believe. So they might want to either break bread and celebrate a deal, or prepare for them not wanting to shake hands.
Well, they've done this before, right?
And they'll kick the can even further. Either way, markets have basically priced in that dysfunction, and we're seeing it in terms of just less sell-offs and just less volatility than we did in, say, 16 or 17.
Is there anything that worries you about what's happening here with either the stock market at the valuation it's at? What I'm reading is that this is generally an earnings-driven stock market rally. The earnings are still good, or quarterly results when they come in are still solid, so it doesn't seem like it's artificially inflated that way. But is there anything about this economy and how we are doing the business of America that makes you say, here is something I am a little concerned about?
Probably the Federal Reserve. So if they make up their minds that they want to put us on a higher interest rate trajectory just for their own reasons, indicators they're looking at, one thing that they've done recently is they've moved away from our traditional measure of inflation to look at a preferred measure, and there's variance between the two different measures. If they make up their minds that they want to hike rates again, you could see a repeat of what we saw in late 18, where the Fed was essentially murdering the economy, and they reversed course in 2019. They cut rates 3 times in 19. I think they're on autopilot, and if you take Jay Powell at his word, they're not going to touch rates this year. That can change in a hurry, and they might get trigger happy about just the really hot economy. The Fed is a very effective driver of booms, but they can also kill an economy in a heartbeat.
Other question I have for you about the economy and where things go from here is, are there some sectors of the economy we have here in this country where we're just starting to see, hey, technological advances or breakthroughs in this area, maybe it's healthcare technology or whatever, that might drive another leg upward in this economy? Is there something that's just kind of percolating at the surface and we're going to really start to see it play into this economy that could provide for strength in the days to come?
I think so. I think there's still going to be a lot more movement towards AI. It's hard to say what specific sector, but even at the business school, we're getting feedback from industry that accounting isn't going to be done the way that accounting has always been done, with just very traditional high number of laborers in different firms. A lot of it can be automated. Same with legal services. A contract looks the same, almost every single contract, and you can put all of that into big machine learning, and they can handle it for you, so you need way less lawyers. So there could be more disruption. Not sure. It's going to look a lot like what we've seen in ag, what we've seen in energy, and revolutions in other industries could come, including higher ed. So
yes,
keep an office open here.
Yeah. By the way, when you say AI to a farm kid, we better clarify what that means, because when I grew up, AI was artificial insemination. We were trying to do some breeding techniques on the farm. So you're talking about artificial intelligence, right?
Where's the turkey baster?
Clean it up.
You never know what you're going to get, Scott, when you come over here to the Need to Know Morning Show. But yeah, so the huge driver there. When I talk to business people in this community here, I sense a tremendous amount of optimism. What are you hearing when you talk to people around this community?
Yeah, I think people are really happy with market performance in 2019. If you look back, we're at new highs over 2018, about up 6% from those 2018 record highs before the December sell-off. I think that our economy in the Fargo area is extremely hot, and that's, we showed up just recently as the top economy in the nation for job creation and job opportunity, and that's amazing. I get the same general feeling.
You're not a political commentarian, so I won't ask you to comment politically, but with what you're seeing in the economy right now, and knowing we've got a presidential election coming up, it would seem to me to be, no-brainer is too strong of a word, but it would seem to me that the incumbent stands a tremendous chance of getting reelected when we have all of these economic things. You named them earlier, the stock market, inflation, unemployment, everything is about honestly as good as you could hope for in a developed society. Any reason to think that there's any part of this economy that changes between now and November that hurts the president?
It gets tough. You just start to run up against time. And traditionally, the Federal Reserve just, again, goes into autopilot mode as they get closer to an election because they don't want to politicize it. So there's a lot of things that are working in Trump's favor. He's a really tough out as an incumbent with a strong economy. Incumbents are just by definition really tough too.
Yes.
So it'll be an interesting year. There's a lot of things to be concerned about with his management of the economy too in terms of spending. But you look at the other party and what they're promising, and it's kind of crazy too.
Yeah. As someone who has supported the president's policies, mostly, there's certain things like the paid family leave that I make as a fiscal conservative make me a little nervous. But overall, I've been a big fan of this president's policies economically. It's easy for me to look at. China says, okay, let's come to the table. Our pigs are starving. We need to buy some soybeans. Let's go. It's easy for me to want to cheer for the president in this and say, yes, the tariffs worked. Is that too simplistic to say that if what we're seeing now actually happens on the 15th, that this will be a big policy win for the president with his tariff policy?
Yeah, you hope that that's the end game. You would like to see hard negotiation leading to just a reset of really great trade terms. We'll see.
Yeah. It's always tricky with a communist regime. We've seen before they walk you right up to the finish line and say, "Oh, I don't know, maybe we'll do something else." Before I let you go, by the way, I'll just let you finish with a comment. Any last thoughts on the state of the current economy and maybe something we're not talking about that we're not seeing in the headlines?
I came on prepared to try to avoid anything real specific and precise because economists are usually dead wrong on that. Okay. I think, something that your listeners would appreciate, though, is that the last decade was probably the best decade we've ever had in human history. And I think that point of view of just looking at long-term trends, the environment's getting better, believe it or not. People are being lifted out of poverty in the hundreds of millions worldwide. Yeah. And those stories of just that are upbeat, I think, are the ones that just get completely crowded out by the latest tragedy.
I love that. And there was an editorial in the Washington Examiner a couple weeks ago or last week that talked about just that. Like, it's really the best time ever to be alive. Yep. Certainly we have our issues in the world and in our country, but the technology advancements, healthcare, the things that we can do are absolutely phenomenal. Yep. Before I let you go, I got to ask you, Charlie Institute, you're just finishing kind of your maybe you're not your first full year, yep, but you're kind of your first year where you had some data kind of going into the new year. Tell us about the Institute and what you're doing up there right now and what 2020 has.
So we're hiring 5 professors. We've got about 20 fellows who are working on research related to Institute themes right now. We have some really great guests coming in this spring, a guy named Johan Norberg, who's a Swedish economist, very prominent disciple of Milton Friedman. He'll be coming later in January. We have a Nobel Prize winner coming in March. I think the first Nobel laureate to ever visit NDSU. I'm not sure about that, but he's 93 years old and won a Nobel Prize. While I was in grad school, I got to work with him. So he's doing us a favor by coming up to Fargo. And God, let's dial up some warm weather. He's from he's coming from Orange, California.
Okay, well,
we fingers crossed.
Maybe put it off until February or March. January is not the month. Yeah, so. Scott, good to see you as always. Thanks for coming by. Happy New Year to you.
You too, and have a great weekend.
Scott Beaulier, Dean of the NDSU Business School. Get to know him now. He's going to be in some